Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Attacker Productions. Today I back up once again by Austin and Jimmy.
Yes,
Hello.
sir. You did it backwards. What the
I
fuck's wrong
did
with
that
you?
on purpose.
I was taking a drink. I wasn't even listening to what you were saying, and then as soon as Austin said something, I was like, wait, he didn't actually try to cut me off this time.
No, he did an order unlike you, Jimmy. But today we're going over the black revealed cards because I'm not starting this over. We got the Shroom and Salsa package, which is fantastic. So before we get into it, buttons, click it, comments. Yeah, let's do it. Shroom and Salsa. Send the top 2 cards of your deck to your warp. When this card attacks, look up to 5 cards from the top of your deck. Add up to 1 black Demon Realm Race or black Demon God card among them and add to your hand. Shuffle your deck afterwards. And then your awaken is 4 or less life. Or when there's 6 or more battle cards in your warp, you may send 1 card from your hand to your warp, draw 2, switch up to one of your energies active mode, and add cards from your life. So you have 6 left. I really want to get Jimmy on this particular reveal because he, I think, is probably the one of 2 people who's played Shroom and Salsa at our locals.
So I don't see this really interacting with the old Shroom and Salsa package as much as I was hoping. Saying that the old package was about like drop area denial on your opponent's side, which I think is really cool, and I'd really like to see some of these cards make it into the old package and vice versa. But this leader already really intrigues me. As we'll see on the backside, there's some like little limiting factors that's a little weird. But I mean, we haven't seen every card, so we don't exactly know what the package wants to do overall. But it's really intriguing, even if it does seem a little lackluster on service.
I will say, I read that wrong when we first started reading these. And I read it as the top 7 cards of your deck to your warp. And I was like, dear lord, that makes a lot more sense now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that'd be a little funky, but also it would be kind of ballsy, especially with such a battle card heavy format with Cooler on the horizon, looking like it's going to be a very strong deck. That would be a little funky. But I think a top 5 search for a Demon Realm Race or a Demon God. There's a lot of really good Demon Realm Race and Demon Gods. I don't know how many of them will be all that great in this list, but that's a pretty wide net of really solid cards. The Awaken is also fairly solid. Warping 1 card from your hand to draw 2 and untap 1 is really good, saying that this deck interacts with the warp.
And once you've activated the Awaken, you now become Demon God, Shroom, and Salsa, Deadly Geniuses. This is where things get a little bit interesting. The card now has a permanent. When you would place a card from your combo area in your drop, you move it from the game instead. Auto send 1 Demon Realm Race or Demon Realm, or Demon God card from your hand to your warp. When this card attacks, you draw 2. Activate battle once per turn. If this card is in battle, use up to 1 Demon Realm Race or Demon God card, both mono black, without super combos from your warp in a combo. I do like Activate Battle, which helps with the permanent effect, but if you do that, make sure you're putting that into your Z energy so it doesn't just disappear on you.
I mean, this deck just screams, hey, you're going to use the Z deck with this deck, and you don't have another option, just because of that permanent. Saying that you can only put 1 card in your Z energy per battle, it looks like you're not going to be going very heavy on combos in this deck. Maybe 1 combo per attack, which is probably smart. It's kind of like a built-in pacer. But honestly, like, other than that permanent, everything on this card looks amazing. The sending 1 Demon Realm Race or Demon God from your hand to the warp, again, you're helping out the archetype, and when this card attacks, draw 2 cards. Just anytime you see draw 2 cards on a card is usually a good thing. And the Activate Battle, a note on this is that it doesn't negate the skills of the card you're comboing with. So, like, cards that pop into my head, I'll have to read the card again, make sure that it's a Demon Realm Race or a Demon God. I know it's not a Demon God, but the Gravy, that when you combo with it, you pull 2 cards back from your warp. Like, that could be pretty solid with this Activate Battle, because it does not negate the skills. Of course, that's why it says non-super combo card. So we might see some cards that interact during a combo, and it'll make more sense for why this permanent exists. Because that is kind of a damning thing, because there's so many great black cards that you want in your drop area, and also this tells me that this is not going to be a very overrealm heavy list, which Black has traditionally been outside of stuff like Gogeta Xeno and Dark Broly in a way.
Speaking of the Z Energy, we'll go for our first Z card was released, which is the Z Awaken, which takes 3 Z Energy, Demon God Shroom, and Demon God Salsa. Intimate, wow. Yeah, okay.
Imminent annihilation. There you go. I mean, it might be a little. It might be a little intimate with this fucking furry on here.
Yeah. So it's a double strike for 1 black energy when your life is 2 or less. Activate main once per turn. Place one of your Z energies in your owner's drop. You may look at the bottom card of your deck and play it if it's a Shroom or Salsa card with Servant and an energy cost of 3 or less, and place it. Sorry, and there you go. Yeah, me and Jimmy talked about this beforehand. This very weird wording, and place it at the bottom of your deck if you don't. So pretty much you look at the bottom of your deck. If it's Shroom or Salsa with Servant, cool. Play it if it's 3 or less. If not, it stays there. That tells us right now we're getting overwhelm cards for this archetype as well, which just helps with the idea of just pitching a card to draw. Pitch and draw?
Overlord.
Overlord, yeah.
Overlord, yeah.
Same activate battle. If there's this card's in battle, use up to 2 Demon Realm Race or Demon God cards, both mono black without super combo. So it upgrades it a little bit, making it a little bit stronger, especially since you're going for that potentially game-ending strike.
Yeah. And this activate battle does not specify a 0-5K combo, which is kind of huge.
Nice.
So this could be a real threat having that double strike on there and being a Z Awaken that you can trigger, anytime you can trigger an awakening. This seems really, really strong. The activate main, again, it is very weirdly worded. The first time I read it, it just confused the shit out of me because I just completely skipped over the play it if it's a, and I read it as look at the bottom card, Shroom and Salsa card with Servant, which costs a 3 or less, and place it at the bottom of the deck if you don't. And I was like, the fuck does that mean? You're just going to look at the bottom card and just be like, oh, that's Shroom and Salsa, and go back? Yeah, exactly. So that seems really solid too. Especially with Servant. Servant is, I think, one of the more underrated skills. I think the Overlord Servant package was a little lackluster when it dropped, but I think it can be really cool in a deck like this. Especially with how really solid some of these Servant cards that have already been announced are.
It's nice to have a Z leader. It's going to be basically 40k double strike when you swing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, keep in mind, because the Z-Waking can occur mid-battle as well, you can actually swing on as your regular side, or regular leader, activate battle, combo 1 card, then Z-Awaken to get that double strike, and then you activate battle to get 2 more cards, if you're going for that game hit, obviously, which I think is pretty cool. And another Z card we got was Demon God Demigra. It is a 2 energy, 3 Z energy, unique. This card gets plus 2,000 power for each card in your Z energy, which could potentially be really good. Auto once per turn, if it is your turn, when you activate Overwhelm or Dark Overwhelm, or play a black battle card from your Warp, draw 1 card and choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost 6 or less and send it to the owner's Warp. That is really strong.
Very, very strong. Again, I think the playing the card from the Warp is kind of put towards the Shroom and Salsa. Again, we haven't seen everything, but this already screaming like I set for Demigra is one of my favorite decks, and seeing this card makes me really, really want to play set for Demigra again. This is like exactly what I think the Black Overwhelm strategies need is a card like this. It would have been nice if it had something like Barrier as well. This is one of the few Z battle cards that we've seen that does not have any deflect or Barrier, and being a pretty heavy investment of 2 energy and 3 Z energy. A little rough, and this is also 2 specified black, so it's not very splashable in the more wider open or multicolor Overwhelm strategies, which are rare, but it's something to talk about. But the auto is just fantastic. If this card sticks, it's gonna be an absolute monster.
Yeah.
That was my only issue, is that this card's insane, but that non-protection's rough.
Going into now the battle cards, we got Dark Mechikabura, Overlord once per turn, which I think is this the first Overlord that's once per turn, or they always been once per turn?
I think this is the first once per turn Overlord. I could be completely blanking. For some reason, I think the baby leader has once per turn on its Overlord. I'll have to refresh on that, but this looks new to me.
This has an auto when this card attacks, and this is limit 1, which tells me that it can be restored to some degree. It's per all of these cards. That's right. When this card attacks, use the 1 Demon Realm Race or Demon God card, both mono black, without super combo from your warp. So pretty much just gives you a free combo without having to expend any resources from your own hand. And the activate main for 1 black energy. If your leader is a black Demon Realm Race card, and there are 6 or more cards in your warp, you play this card from your hand. So, not from the warp, unfortunately, but from your hand.
This kind of been the theme with black lately, is that you have an activate main for usually like 1 energy that plays a card once you meet the requirements. We've seen this in the Mechikabura Wish Leader. We've seen this in the Toa Tokens list. I think this is a neat way to kind of wean off of the Overrealm idea. Albeit it is a little bit stronger than Overrealm because the card does stick around. And you do get to keep your drop resources, which again, this deck might not have a lot of drop resources. But this is just a really solid card. Essential 25k attack Overlord. The having to have 6 cards, if the warp ends up being a limiting factor, this card might be less and less valuable as the game goes on, because you don't want to be taking cards out of your warp. But seems very, very solid Overrealm. Gonna have a lot of servants, so definitely worthwhile.
Yeah,
I like the card attacks combo up to from your warp. It's a really fun.
It
reminds me a lot of. Go ahead.
I'll say it makes sense with the leader just warping cards, and if you warp a combo card in place and it goes to drop, it's gone forever. So that way it's decks that have extra form of resources is always fantastic. Like you used to play red KP. Using your life as resources. There's some decks that use their energy as resources. It's just fantastic when you get another way of actually maximizing card effects without having to use your own hand.
That's good to say. It reminds me a lot of the King Piccolo thing where you use your life to combo with. So anything that has an extra resource like that is really fun to play, even if it isn't like cracked. It's still, I've always found, fun to play because you're getting value off where other decks don't have that value.
Going into the servants, I guess, for this deck, which would be Demon God Shroom, servant. Auto limit 1, when this card attacks, you may send the top card of your deck to your warp, then choose it to one of your opponent's battle cards if energy costs 4 or less, and send it to its owner's warp. And activate battle for 1 black energy. If there is 1 or more Salsa card in your combo area and you send 1 card other than this card from your hand to your warp, you play this card from your hand or warp. So pretty much you can't just place it into your warp and play it from your warp. But if it's in your warp, you discard and you send 1 card there, you get to play it for 1 energy. You do need a combo card to do that. So strategy, hopefully you warp a Salsa. And I assume this room's I assume they're both the same way worded with the activate battle. So hopefully you just warp 1, that way you could just kind of cycle that for yourself.
Yeah, the servant, this is one of the few times where I think having the servant on a card is more of a detriment than most. Like, I think the most prominent servant card in the game is probably the Baby Gohan. Coming down, being a 25k and a floodgate is strong, and if he just sets on the board for the rest of the time, unless you have an Overlord, this is a card where you're going to want to swing with it more because of how fantastic the auto is with the leader. And like we've seen with the Z leader, this card can play back out from the bottom of the deck. But that's such a late game thing of having to have 2 life to Z awaken. It's kind of a double-edged sword because the card is very strong for the list, but also the servant just really, really hurts.
I also just realized it's a 10k card, so At that same time, if you want to do damage after a certain point, you have to expend resources. But popping a card that's 4 or less is not bad.
Yeah, very, very solid. And this, of course, none of us have played this list because all the cards have not been announced, and I don't want to play any list until I have everything at my disposal. But with this activate battle of comboing a salsa and warping another card and playing this from your hand or warp, I feel like this is going to be very enjoyable to play because it's probably going to feel like a really smooth machine from the looks of it. It kind of, in a way, reminds me of the Cell Ultimate deck in that when I read these cards, it's like the same thing reading that, where Cell is such a smooth engine. I feel like this might end up being a very smooth and nice engine to play, even if it's not very strong in actual gameplay. It just the activate battle alone excites me for the plays that you can make.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think and also the servant, it's going to be interesting having that engine in this too. I'm really intrigued to see how this plays overall as a whole.
And going into Demon God Salsa, activate battle is pretty much the same. If there's one or more Shroom cards in your combo area, send one other card. Then this card from your hand, yada yada yada, you get to play for 1 energy. And then the auto is when this card is played, you may send the top card of your deck to your warp. Then your opponent sends 1 card from their hand to the warp. So where Shroom may not always be a great option to play, Salsa will always be an option to play because it will always get its effect off.
I mean, again, it seems really solid. Being able to refill your warp, which I think might be the limiting factor in this deck. I don't think hand size is going to be a problem. I don't think the power of the set battle cards is going to be a problem, but I feel like managing the warp is going to be the most important thing to this archetype. And I think anytime that you can just put a card on field that is going to put something into your warp for your use later on, I think is going to be very, very good. Saying that you get to choose the card within your hand to send is nice as well, and you're not playing that gamble off the top deck of getting your salsas and shrooms into the warp. Again, the activate battle excites me because I think it's going to be a very fun, almost like the opposite of playing yellow, where you put a puzzle for your opponent. You're playing a puzzle for yourself, and I feel like if you solve that puzzle, you're going to come out on top, is the way that I look at this.
I think, too, when you were saying how, refueling the warp and all, it's going to be, I think maybe they're, with the whole combo thing and that gravy we were talking about earlier, they're going to want you to, like, use that so you can do, like, a small, like, tiny bit of overall package maybe. Because, I haven't seen too much of, we only have what we have here in front of us, but there might be a small overall package that encourages that.
Yeah, and like with the Z battle cards having a 3Z energy cost, I feel like some of the low to the ground overwhelms could be very viable in this list to when you do Z Awaken, or not Z Awaken, but when you do activate any sort of Z effect or activate something like Gravy, or your cards get popped on field, it'll be a nice way to just give a boost to your warp.
Yeah, this is gonna play, like you said, I think really smoothly. It just, like I said, it looks like it's gonna be fun no matter what, even if it isn't that great. Looks like it'll be fun.
Going to what I can only assume is the boss monster of what we've seen so far, Demon God Shroom and Demon God Salsa, Unending Nightmare. It's an 8-drop, double strike servant, which I don't like, but it's cheap to play. So permanent though, when this card is placed in your drop from your battle area or combo area, place at the bottom of its owner's deck instead. When this card is placed in your drop from your battle area or combo area, does that override the leader's permanent? Because when it hits the drop, I guess you choose which one goes off first, I guess.
I would assume that's what I'm seeing here, and this also being a 1-cost 10k, this is a target for comboing from the warp. So I do believe that will override, because I don't see any reason for that permanent to exist otherwise.
It's like when autos go off at the same time, you choose which one goes into effect. I guess same thing for permanents. I've never actually had the opportunity to have two permanents be in effect the same time like this, which is kind of interesting. But the auto is when this card is played, your opponent chooses one card in their hand, and one of their battle cards, ignoring barrier, send it to the owner's warps. Activate battle for limit 1, 2 black energy. If you have 3 or more energy and there are 2 or more black battle cards in your combo area, you play this card from your warp. So, like I said, the deck is cycling cards to your warp. You should see this eventually. It is only 2 energy to play by turn 3. At 25k double strike, that practically gets past any barrier card.
Well, 35k with Servant.
Sorry, yes, I forgot. Servant does give it a natural 10k boost. I forgot about that. That justifies the 3-drop being a 10k. I completely forgot about that. Okay. That makes that 3-drop a lot better in my mind.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, 35k double strike. That pops a barrier card, gets rid of your opponent's hand. Now, your opponent does get to choose the card. So, if they have more than one card and they want to keep that barrier card, they're going to keep that barrier card, unfortunately. But still, I mean, not bad.
I mean, anytime you can have a guaranteed resource, and once you have this in hand and you put it in your warp, you're done. There's really no way for your opponent to interact with your warp. So this is going to be a looming threat at all points in the game, and this being a activate battle is really huge, because your opponent swings out with their one battle card on field. You just drop this and say, hey, get rid of that battle card.
Ooh, that's going to be a factor going against Shroom and Salsa. Knowing when to swing with how many battle cards in case they were to play this on you during your go out swing.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a card that you're going to have to think about going up against this list. Once that it's in the warp, it is now a threat to you. I think this doesn't have the play from hand because that might be a little bit too strong, being able to just throw this out against an opponent for 2 energy without them knowing what you have in your hand. So that does kind of suck that you can't do that, but very, very strong. Like, I'm really excited, and it makes me really excited to play this archetype just for this card alone. Again, the permanent is a little weird. I would assume that it would override the leader's permanent, because why else would it say that? But having a 35k double striker for 2 energy is already incredibly strong outside of its activate battle and its auto.
And there's not a lot that hits it either, because it's an 8-drop. It's 25,000 before it comes into play. So that
playing nothing blue is your only worry.
Yeah, that's it. But other than that, and if it goes, it just it can go in your hand, and then you can use one of the other Shroom or Salsas, to put it back in your warp, then attempt again later. So that's really fun. And I also don't forget that the Z Awaken leader does not have that permanent. So that's for they go to your drop area. I mean, they go out of their games to the drop area. So that's another thing. Don't not even worry about that once you're Z Awaken at that point. But this just looks really fun. This card is insanely solid. It, like I said, it's going to stick around. It's guaranteed. I like this card a lot. This is a very, very strong card.
Yeah, and this is also not leader locked. This seems really solid for. I think the permanent is probably there to limit non-Shroom and Salsa leaders from running a card like this, since there's battle cards that will allow you just to put this in your warp, because with other Overrealm lists, you're just going to have to hope to hit this off of the top of the deck and then warp it with a Overrealm card or something of that. So this would be really nice to see what this card gets slotted into.
It's just nice to see a reliable, easy boss monster in black that is, a Saiyan.
Going over the extra card we got for this set so far, or for at least this archetype, Genius Craft. Activate main, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with energy costs less than or equal to their current energy. Send it to its owner's warp. Additionally, if your leader card is a Demon God card, you draw 1 card. So in current format, there's not a lot of we're going back into taller cards super quick, but in the current format, a lot of decks just kind of put out a lot of cards that are typically low cost energy. This could take care of that and still draw you a card in this deck for 1 energy.
Solid. It's an activate main, which is I would have liked to have it at a speed of like activate battle, but that might be a little bit too strong. Off the top of my head, there's not a ton of cards or a ton of decks that's really, really affected by this. I think this will just help with like some lower pesky cards. But then again, a lot of those have barrier. But maybe with this ban list, we'll get rid of a lot of them shits. The Demon God leader drawing a card is, again, nice. I like that you get a little bit of a bonus for playing this in the deck that it is designated for. But I could see this as like a really nice sideboard option. I don't see myself playing this in the main deck at all. Because for low to the ground stuff, we have the Shroom that on swing will just warp something. So I don't see this being very necessary in the main board.
Since this deck likes to play cards into the warp so frequently, it goes really well with the new Dark Broly card we got, which has an activate main for 2 energy. You could play it from your warp, but it's your standard 30k 6 cost Dark Broly, overwhelm 6. When you play this card, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, send it to its owner's warp. So, remind me real quick, all the other Dark Broly cards have the condition where it's pay 1, send 6 30Ks to your drop or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Send 6 black battle cards to your warp, and then you will play the Dark Broly from your drop area. This card, out of every card that we've seen, and I'm so excited to play the new Shroom and Salsa stuff, but this makes me so excited to go back and play Dark Broly, because this is exactly what Dark Broly needed. This doesn't take it back to its old spam the board, kill the swing at face 30k bullshit that it had, but you just pay the cost to play one of your other Dark Broly's by sending this card to your warp, and now you have another Dark Broly that you can play out from the warp there. The Overwhelm 6 is also a nice option to have, but I feel like if you're playing it in the Dark Broly list, you're playing it for its activate main. Yeah. And it's another piece of removal. You stack this on top of the other purple Broly from Dark Broly, and you're going to be warping out the field easily. Yeah. This card makes me so excited to go back and play Dark Broly.
It's just a solid card too. Yeah. You overwhelm, play it for just 6, and then warp a card, pay 2, bring it back in, warp another card.
Even if it's just 1 card we get, I love the fact that we're still getting like mini support for older decks, and it seems like it's being more frequently lately than what it used to be, and I'm just excited about that.
I really hope we see a trend of printing cards that just fix the slight problem with older archetypes, because I think this might be a hot take, but I think this card alone brings Dark Broly up to a fighting chance of being able to play against some of these newer decks. Just from this single card alone. The 0-0 on combo is rough, but we've already lived through 0-0 combos on Dark Broly's anyway. I think this card is going to be one of the sleeper cards in the next set. That might be a hot take, but I think this card is incredibly strong for Dark Broly. And the fact that it can play from the warp, it might see some play in Shroom and Salsa as well. But I feel like this is going to shine bright in Dark Broly.
And with that being yesterday's releases of cards, there was a lot more today, so it's a little bit longer video. Thanks for sticking around with us. I would pass off to Jimmy, but he tends not to do certain things. So, Austin, would you like to lead us out?
Yeah. Thank you all for stopping by and watching the video. Let us make mistakes so we don't have to read your cards. What? Yeah. Fuck you, Jimmy. Hey, I was doing it perfect.
No, you weren't.
Yeah.
You fucked it up.
I did not.
Yes, you did. Play
it
back, Bancroft.
Oh, yeah, I'll play it back.
Anyways. Let us make mistakes so you don't have to.
There you go.
That's what I said.
No, you didn't.
Read your cards. Know your plays. fluff out.
You're not fluff.